was Bradenton on the Gulf Coast of Florida. Home and family. He believed they were still there. Believed they were still alive. He had to believe that, or else there would be no point in walking out of this mine and trying to go on. He simply had to believe that. Wolfe steeled himself and continued making his way along the cold stone walls of the mine as the amount of light showing ahead increased. Very bright, very far away. Wolfe hadn't realized just how deep the tunnel ran into the mountain, but for all this time he hadn't seen so much as a hint of sunlight, nor any other kind of light since the flashlight battery died. It pleased and excited him to see it now, and he increased his pace toward the mine entrance. His excitement ended quickly, and he stumbled to a halt. The light was too bright, painfully bright, so bright it felt like daggers being driven into his eyes. He blinked, tears rolling down his cheeks, and tried to shield his eyes in the crook of his arm. It did no good. The pain was too intense, the sunlight too strong. Wolfe leaned against the cold rock wall and slumped into a sitting position. He would just have to wait for his eyes to adjust. After all, it had been months, perhaps years, since he last saw any sort of light. His eyes must have dilated beyond all reason. He could wait a little longer, except his eyes did not readjust. The sunlight remained painfully strong. He rummaged in his gym bag and pulled out a spare shirt and draped that over his head to put a halt to the discomfort. He waited until the sun had set outside before he was able to venture out into the world once again, but even so it did not seem dark. There was no moon, but the starlight was enough to make everything look as bright as day to him. The only difference was that the shadows were a little deeper, a little darker than he remembered they had been on a sunny day. The air felt and smelled as magnificent as he'd hoped to find, but apart from that, nothing was quite as he expected it to be. The slope of the mountainside was the same as he remembered, but where there had been forest now, there was only devastation. He was standing in the middle of the world's biggest blowdown. Trees tumbled like pickup sticks, all of them falling toward the southeast. While he was deep in the tunnel, they must have hit Boise too, so perhaps this explosion simply represented a target later on the list. Certainly this one had been closer than the others. He had been fairly far out from Boise when he took refuge in the mine. He tried to remember how far, but could not. Still, Boise was virtually due west from the last point of reference he could recall, and these trees were felled by a fierce wind from the northwest. However far the blast and the windstorm that followed were terrible in its disruptive power. And if the wind was that bad, how bad must the radiation have been? Perhaps still was. Wolfe shuddered. Not that there was anything he could do about it. He had to come outside. He had to find a way to go home. He had little expectation that his home still existed. After all, it was only a few miles across open water from MacDill, where the U.S. military's Central Command was headquartered. Surely there would have been a few nukes consigned to MacDill Air Force Base, probably several. His hope was that if they, whoever they were, he had no idea who it was who bombed them, if they missed Boise, then please God, perhaps they missed MacDill too. Perhaps Bradenton, perhaps his home and his loved ones were unharmed. He made his way carefully through the fallen trees, which was made at least a little easier by the fact that all had fallen in one direction. He was able to zigzag down the mountainside to the valley floor and the highway. It was hard to see what had become of his tractor. The truck had been sent rolling off the hill. It struck hard on the side of the hood and buckled the right front wheel, snapped the axle, and crushed the cab. Wolfe shook his head and managed a small, bitter smile. He still owed more than $18,000 on the rugged old Kenworth. He wondered what the finance company intended to do about that now. He walked around to the back of the trailer. He did not know what prompted him to close it before he went up to the mine that last time. The doors were standing open now, and there was no sign of the crates of pretzels that had remained there after he exhausted himself carrying much of the load up the hillside. That was all right. Someone had been able to benefit from them. Wolfe could not begrudge them that. He hoped the snack food helped them and whoever it was who had come fleeing down this road. He hoped they were able to survive the winds and the radiation.